Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome virtually and physically to the Immersion Lab. The Immersion Lab is a research facility for you. In the Immersion Lab, we celebrate and research how to use gaming, motion capture, artificial reality, virtual reality, develop gaming techniques, but apply those gaming techniques to education, to research, to teaching. We have this weekly or monthly Immerse series where we celebrate different research activities from the community. We're in the middle now of a 4-segment sequence on the on-ramp to the metaverse. What is the metaverse? What are the technologies that allow you to get into the metaverse? Part 2 is today. I'm joined today by Thales Rex, the VR, AR gaming big data technologist, supporting the community, sharing a little bit now about motion, not emotion, but motion in immersive experiences. So participants, please text your questions in the chat as we go. We'll try to answer them. We'll also have a Q&A at the end. Welcome to Immersed and welcome, Thales.
Thank you, Brian. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the Immersed in the Metaverse. Hello, everyone joining us for the first time, and welcome back to those who have been following the series. I hope some of you from last month were able to kind of follow the take-home lab and create some kind of result of your own custom avatar. So this is the Immerse series in the Metaverse, specifically motion in immersive experiences. So last month, we did discuss the fabrication of photorealistic avatars using some of the new and advanced open source platforms. Not only that, but in terms of the metaverse, we also discussed the importance of interchangeable tools and how we should consider being flexible with particular content creation platforms across the board. In doing so, we investigated methods like the USD file format as one strategy and way of seamlessly collaborating amongst different software tools. So today I wanted to continue our conversation with avatar creation and to start to bring these characters to life using animations and some of the tools we have here in the Immersion Lab. Now, to be fair, photorealism and the look of our character is only one piece of the development. And in fact, studies have shown that the look and realism of your character only gets you so far. It truly is that the compelling feature is the behavioral fidelity and the motion in which our characters and the way in which they move and navigate through these virtual worlds we deem important. So as we think of the metaverse, we will need to consider the ways in which users interact with each other, as well as other NPCs or non-player characters. Not just communicating and having our mouth move in ways that match the audio sequence like we investigated last month, but also the way in which our bodies move and behave in particular situations. So I wanted to transition to motion and animated avatars. So this will be a bit of a continuation from last month's, fabricated avatars, and to start to bring some of these characters to life using different mechanisms to do so. Today, I will share a bit of the tools that we use here in the Immersion Lab and how we streamline some of the process of animating an avatar and using them within a virtual experience. But also, I will include another take-home exercise at the end that will allow you to animate your own character. If you've been following along, this will be a perfect opportunity for you guys to add on the animation to your avatar. So not only do you get the mouth movements, but you also get body movements as well. And now just a precursor, animations can be a hefty topic. So before we will do our best to cover as much as we can within a 1-hour section. But again, if anybody has any questions along the way, feel free to put them into chat, and we'll also leave some time at the end for discussion. So let's get started. So again, just a reminder, this is a 4-part series. The avatar creation that we did last month, we did the fabrication of high fidelity avatars. This week, we'll talk about motion and the animation. Follow that, we will then ultimately talk about haptics and kind of interacting with virtual objects. And the fourth series will be kind of putting all of these pieces together, what this means, the importance of it, and conceptualizing how this can really be a part of the metaverse, if you will. So an overview for today, we will just do a quick recap in case any of you guys were not here last month, or if you guys just need a refresher. We will talk about the next steps for adding animations, some preliminary information for you guys to kind of understand how animation works within a 3D model. And then we'll talk a little bit about the tools and technology. This will include the OptiTrack system, which is our motion capture mechanism that we have here in the lab. And then we will, of course, bring this into Unreal Engine, and the take-home lab will ultimately conceptualize some of the animation libraries that you guys will be able to participate in, given that you don't have a full OptiTrack system in your own house. And maybe you do, that's great, awesome. And at the end, we will then finalize with a discussion. So please keep that in mind. So just to recap real quick, we discussed our MetaHuman Creator. This was that online platform that allowed you to create high fidelity avatars. You could export them as 1K, 2K, 8K resolution. You have really good textures, bump maps, normal maps on top of that avatar, and you can even see hair. And so this was just our platform that we used to actually create our avatar. We then discussed a little bit about the NVIDIA Omniverse platform, again, to refer back to the USD, the universal format, which you allowed to trade from platform to platform. So you were really able to kind of migrate amongst whatever platform you were interested in. And we specifically talked about audio to face, which ultimately used audio sequencing to animate your avatar's facial features. And then we ultimately kind of put all these pieces together into Unreal Engine, which is going to be the game engine that we're going to be continuing with within this workshop. So if you guys do have that project, you guys are more than welcome to open that up, follow along at the kind of the end part of this series where we do some of that take-home exercises. All right, and so for tools that we'll be talking about today, we'll be talking about the OptiTrack system and the Motive software, and this is for the motion capture sequence. I'll explain a little bit of how it works and what can be done using this technology. And then I will talk a little bit about Motion Builder for 3D character animation. This allows you to kind of edit particular features, but to keep in mind, some of you might not have Motion Builder. And so for the take-home lab, we won't make that required. This is just informative for you guys to know kind of our pipeline that we ultimately do kind of within the lab itself. And then, of course, the game engine, Unreal Engine. So although we are going to go straight into motion tracking data, I do want to highlight that it might be beneficial for you all to know about a little bit about animation before jumping into the lab work. Things like keyframes, skeletons, retopology, inverse kinematics, weight painting, all of these are important for you, important terminology for you to familiarize yourself with, regardless of what method you are using to animate your avatar. With that said, we don't really have that much time to discuss all of these different terms. So I do want to point out one term that we will use quite a bit during the session, and that is skeleton. So a skeleton animation, or quote unquote rigging, is a technique in computer animation in which a character is represented in two parts. You have your surface representation, which is primarily called the mesh, and that is the skin of your avatar. And the second component is that hierarchical set of interconnected parts called bones, and collectively forming the skeleton or rig. So as you see in this animation, when you see through that mesh, you have this skeleton. And this is what we'll be manipulating to actually rig your avatar or animate your character further. Digital rigs, you can see them as virtual bones or joints and muscles that allow the model to move. A good rig really has enough bones to be flexible and give you the right control and the right movements. Too many bones could be a little bit more time consuming and might not be really necessary. So you do need to find that middle ground. Now, while this technique is often used to animate humans and other organic features, it really serves to animate the process more intuitively. And that same technique can be used to deform of objects, in doors, chests. So these bones don't need to be specific to a humanoid. And with that said, there's a number of different skeletons and rigs that you're able to use. So these are just a set that come from Blender. But on the top left, if you have a horse, you can animate a horse, a fish or a shark. You can do a dog or a cat, even a bird. But today we'll obviously be focusing on the humanoid. But it's good to be aware that your bone structure will change based on the mesh that you're trying to manipulate. So why motion capture? So animation, if any of you guys have previous experience in this, it can be very difficult. It can be time consuming. These are just a couple frames from Blender where you're really dealing with a ton of keyframes, a ton of different orientations, transforms, rotations of every single bone. And if you're working on, let's say, that bird or that horse, you can imagine that a lot of data you need to keep in mind, and the organization can be overwhelming for beginners. And so motion capture helps along with the animation for humanoid avatars at least, and will allow you to record natural movements of individuals using using kind of motion tracking technology like the OptiTrack system. And this will definitely expedite the process for sure. So what system do we use? We use the OptiTrack system, which uses a camera to track single points on the body within the three-dimensional space. Now, by marking different parts of the body, we can create a template for the system to infer where the body is moving and how that relates to a humanoid skeleton. We then can use this information to drive our animated character to perform the actions we would like to see in the avatar. And so this image here, we have that rig on top, which we very much do have in the studio, in the Immersion Lab studio, but you can also do multi-user as well. In this picture, you have a sword and a shield, but this could be anything. And you'll see some examples in a second. So this is just one example of a recorded professional conductor working with the movements and tracking parts of their body to create a skeleton that will be then used later on into a game engine. But here you can see what the skeleton looks like compared to what the conductor is doing in real life. And as you can see, the small dots are located on the body of the conductor, so the system can understand where he is moving. And after we calibrate and assign the skeleton, we can then use this information, the skeletal information, into our game engines and within our animation workflow. We can either do this pre-recorded or we can record this live. And we did provide a live demo in one of our previous Immerse series, so definitely check that out if you guys are interested. We'll include a link at the end if you want to see how we implemented this live. And so here are just a few examples that we've recorded in the Immersion Lab. So all the way from the top left with fencing, you've probably, if you've seen some of our previous Immerse series, that's one example. In the top middle there, we have someone riding a bike. So we can even use objects to do more interaction, and it would be more lifelike. Especially if you have a table and you're smacking the table, you can really get that kind of impact. We also have dancing, as you see in the top right. On the top left, we've had individuals coming in for kind of physical therapy practices, so being able to record that for their movements. And then on the bottom right, just a little glimpse of the multi-user capabilities that we're able to do. So if people are throwing the ball to each other, or you have two fencers competing with each other, you can really capture that moment in time and be able to transition that data into your game engine. And now what we do is a lot for research and a lot for kind of creating these artistic representations of dance or physical therapy. So, you know, we definitely branch into a lot of different domains. But I did just want to show you kind of an example of what it looks like in a professional setting. This has become very popular within the gaming industry, especially those that are diving into the metaverse and diving into different ways of animating a character. And so I wanted to show you just a little bit of a behind the scenes glimpse of a video game that was created not too long ago called The Last of Us. I'm just going to show you a quick snippet of this, but here you can actually see the full-on production and what this would entail just to animate your avatars.
Either bring in the existing cast from the first game, such as Ashley Johnson, who played Ellie, and Troy Baker, who played Joel, or casting new characters. And they're interpreting the material and bringing their knowledge of these characters and their take on these characters to life.
I think authenticity from every department.
Joel! Tommy! How do I get down there? Okay, Shimmer.
I'll shout now. Yeah. Okay. I need a verbal cue. All right, go.
And now I hope you guys can see this on a production level and really appreciate the amount of complexity that these animations are doing. To manually animate something like this fighting sequence could be very, very time consuming and very difficult, especially when you have different bodies overlaying each other. And so this is just one example of you know, different ways of being able to do this on a production scale that will be able to allow you to produce very high quality animations for your character. So with that being said, just go to the next slide here. With that being said, I just want to note that you don't really need a full built OptiTrack system to do your own motion tracking. I'm assuming that not all of you have a full OptiTrack system in your house. So here are just a few other alternative motion tracking methods that you're able to do and that are on the market and then are either free or require a smaller budget. For example, the Xsense and the Rococo. These are two suits that have a variety of IMUs built within the suit to do remote and inside out tracking of the participant or of the person in the suit. There are also video AI motion tracking technologies that allow you to do some AI to infer where the user is standing just using video capture. Move AI is one big one, and then Wrench AI is used, I know, within NVIDIA's Omniverse. So if you followed kind of the last sequence, definitely check that out if you guys are interested in just using video recording to do your animation. And so that's kind of the recording aspect of things, the acquisition of the animation. But then we're not done there. We're not done at that point. We then need to bring that into another software to maybe clean up certain movements that the avatar did. And so if, you know, one example, when they were falling or fighting, maybe a marker got hidden and their elbow was stretched out much further than what actually happened in real life. You could bring that into Motion Builder and you'll be able to tweak those rotations or really, you know, help with cleaning that up. And so Motion Builder is a real-time 3D engine. It does some motion capture editing, and you can smooth out different sequences as well. So if you have a number of different animations and you want to make it, one long sequence, you can do that in the software as well. Another thing to note is we do retargeting of the skeleton, which I will kind of talk about in the next slide, which is all about kind of identifying the bones. So here I'm going to show a little clip, and this is kind of a workflow that we ultimately do to use our motion capture data and to animate a character. And I imported the MetaHuman character for this. But again, you guys won't need to do this for the take-home lab. I just wanted to show you guys kind of the fundamental workflow that we do as we process some of this data. And so the first skeleton that you see here is the motion capture data that we acquired using the OptiTrack system. And in the back there is our MetaHuman creator character. And if you notice, just at first glance, these bones are a little different. And what I mean by that is you have fingers on the MetaHuman, right? You have two spines here, two positions here that coordinate the spine. And with the MetaHuman, you have about 4 or 5 or 6 of them. And so this software allows you to kind of map the animation or the acquired data to your rigged character. And this could be a very time-consuming process. So I've already went ahead and done some of the steps, but it might be good for you guys to know kind of what it takes to get to that point. So here I just, show you the 2 different characters. So we have our agent and we have our character. The agent, for example, is the OptiTrack data, and the character in itself is the MetaHuman character. And when I say we remap we retarget the bones, what I do is I essentially go into the software and I name the bones directly to the character itself. And so what I do is if there's a spine, I have to actually position that and identify that within the system. And you need to do that for every single bone. And so this can be very time consuming. It can take a lot of time. So I went ahead and just kind of fast forwarded this, but this just gives you a sense of what, some of the steps that need to be done. And for example, the software, it needs to be in a T-pose, for example. And so if you do change the bone here, like I do here, you can see that it gives you an error. And so Motion Builder does its best to try to formulate a good template for you to be able to use later on in Unreal Engine or another software. And you have to do that for every finger. If there's a bone in the body, then you need to kind of retarget it. This is just one quick overview of the steps required. I think I can fast forward here. So I bring the motion tracker guy back. And I'll fast forward this just a little bit. And once we retarget, I can make the source the OptiTrack data. And that's what I do here. Not the control rig, the avatar. Awesome. And once that's done, your MetaHuman data will then be able to move based on the OptiTrack data that you captured earlier. And so this is what we would need to do if we're trying to animate the character based on just the OptiTrack data. For the take-home lab, I'll kind of include steps where you can download pre-existing animations that you can then put into your avatar, and we'll do that in the second half of this. So that being said, that was Motion Builder. So OptiTrack data directly into Motion Builder, and then from there we can then import it into Unreal Engine. And that's just a quick summary of our acquisition and kind of the steps we do to animate our characters. So now we'll kind of talk about the take-home lab, which will allow you to animate your own character. So for this tutorial, all you really need is Unreal Engine. So if you download Unreal Engine and you've already created your avatar, you can then continue on with this process. There are avatars online that you can download if you haven't made it and you haven't followed the step, but every character, depending on where you get it from, if it's Unity or if it's Unreal Engine, you will need to know kind of the bone structure, and that's what we'll kind of go over in the take-home lab in a second. I did include this plugin, this animation starter pack, and this you can actually download on the Unreal Engine's marketplace for free, and there's a whole variety of different animation packs that you're able to use for your own character. For this, I just grabbed a random one, but depending on your scene and what you're trying to convey, what story you're trying to tell, you'll ultimately pick a different starter pack that will fit your needs. So this is the workflow. We'll just talk about, the Unreal Engine 4 scene setup. The plugin will just trickle into the animation library. We will then talk a little bit about the skeletons. So you saw kind of what a skeleton is, but how do we then match our metahuman skeleton to the animation that we downloaded from the marketplace? And then we'll apply that animation to the avatar. And once we do that, we will then combine that avatar within that sequencer that we made last month with our face rigged sequence as well. So you can have your character move while also talking. So it's kind of the building blocks to bringing your character to life, if you will. So first, we will just make sure the scene is open and we are able to download the plugins and extensions, and that's just the animation pack that I'll show you in a second. But this should look familiar to you. This is the scene that I worked in the previous the month. So you have your viewport here with your avatar. You have your world outliner here, which depicts all of the objects in the scene. You have your content browser down here, which will include all of your meshes, your skeletons, everything that's in your scene. And then you have your sequencer here, which will allow you to open it up and actually add different animations or audio or cameras. You can do a whole lot in the sequencer to actually make your scene come to life, if you will. So this is the marketplace. So this is the opportunity for you to download a starter pack. And I really encourage you guys to go onto the marketplace and look for different starter packs. The marketplace is full of different assets and different capabilities that you'll be able to import into your project. This could include environment assets. This could include characters, animations, really everything under the sun that requires you to develop a game. So most of the time it will be available to you. I ultimately just chose the animation starter pack just because it is good for prototyping. It's free and you can go ahead and add it to your project. So if you do go to the Epic Games launcher and you go to Marketplace, you can browse. And if you just type in animation starter pack, you will this will pop up. Keep in mind that the supported engines here are 4.4 to 4.27, 5.0. So when you are downloading this, or any asset for that matter, you do want to make sure that your engine version that you've previously downloaded is supported. And that if you do need a refresher, you can always jump back to our last Immerse series, part 1, where we kind of explain how to download an Unreal Engine project and the different types of versions that you're able to use. And here we'll just talk about the skeleton retargeting. So this we'll probably spend the most time in. And the idea here is we have our own metahuman skeleton, which we saw in Motion Builder not too long ago. We already downloaded, at this stage, we've already downloaded the animation pack and we've imported that into our project. And so now we just need to map our skeleton with the skeleton from the animation rig. And so I'm going to go ahead and play this, and I will try to do my best to kind of explain what's happening here. You know, at the beginning stage, you have just your character and you don't have any animations to it. For this, it's just an empty sequencer. So what you want to do is, if you dive into your MetaHuman content folder, which would appear if you ended up using the Omniverse plugin that we talked about, the connector that allows you to just transition your MetaHuman into Unreal, you can then acquire your skeleton here. And this is another window that pops up that allows you to kind of investigate your bone structure a little bit further. And so what I'm doing here is, all you see is the bones, and we'll get to that a little bit closely. But for the mesh, I just want to be consistent with what you saw in the Motion Builder application. And so I'm just going to change the mesh overlay to the body preview. And this will just give you a little bit of a better understanding on where everything is in relation to the body. And so here we have a lot of bones, and these are all the bones that you saw in the Motion Builder. Nothing is different. But something to keep in mind is, if you go to bones, you can go to bone names. And here you can actually identify what bone is what. And I want to point out that the spine here has different segments. So we have about 4 to 5 different segments of the spine that we need to consider. For this piece right here, since we are just working on the skeleton and no embedded animation already pre-existing in the scene, I just want to make all of my skeleton bones within the tree just the retargeting to skeleton, because I'm going to use the animation that we downloaded to drive these bones forward. So when you first import this, all of these retargeting might be animation, like you see here. You want to change them to skeleton. And the only 2 that you want to keep as animation is root and pelvis. So I go ahead and do that. And here you can go to the retargeting manager, and you just want to make sure that you're on the humanoid rig, because we're working with a humanoid. And here you can see that the source of the names meet our target. And this is important to consider, especially when we're going from one different type of rig to another. Oops. Sorry about that. And so once we got those set bones in line, we then want to go to our animation pack. And these are all of the animations that we downloaded from the marketplace. For this, for the sake of the tutorial, I just grabbed a random one, but there's a ton of them out there, so feel free to investigate. But this is what the animation will look like once our character is fully rigged appropriately. Now, I wanted to point this out because I mentioned that the avatar that we're working with has 4 to 5 different spines, or segments in the spine, rather. For this one, it only has 3. And so the idea here is just to really map the spines accordingly to what we're looking at. So we have all of these bone names, and here in the retargeting manager, we then can properly name them to meet the bones of our animation. And so 1, 2, and 3, we can actually get rid of some of the skeleton bones, and I do the renaming here. Just keep in mind, you do want to bring these all down to skeleton. And you can do that for the whole branch there. Okay, and so here I'm just identifying that there's 1, 2, and 3, and that's what I want my metahuman to match. So I just changed this to spine 1, spine 2, and spine 3. And if you're working with the same animation pack, this is the workflow that you would do. And here you just want to make sure that you are within your humanoid and that your bones are named properly and your skeletal tree is set to skeleton. So once you have that mapped, you'll actually get a new animation by going to retarget animation assets and then duplicate animation assets and retarget. And here you'll have your source, which is the animation that we're working with, and then your target. And if you've been following along, you will actually see your metahuman base skeleton here in the description. So when you choose that, you will get your avatar here and the mesh in itself, but it might be scaled a little differently, but that's okay. Once you hit retarget, it's the same thing that happened with our facial rig from last month. We got our own animation avatar target here in this place marker. So this is the animation that fits your character's rig. And so this is important now. And now that we have this, we can do kind of the same setup that we did from last week. If you guys remember, we dragged in the human, the metahuman, and we got rid of the control rig and we got rid of the facial rig because we aren't manually adjusting for that. We're using these pre-existing animations to drive the avatar's movements. And so right here, I will just do the final steps. So we can actually get rid of that. Oops. And then once we press track and go to animation, you're going to get all of the kind of the animations that came with. You might see some of these, and some of them may work, some of them may not. These are kind of just embedded, but you want kind of the one that we worked with, which is that crouching one that we ended up doing. And it will automatically snap in. And this will depend on where you place this in your animation sequencer. And so if I just go ahead and play it, I have that movement now. And everything seems to be in line. He's not moving, but that we can do, that we can do at another point. And you can actually do that in Unreal Engine. You don't need the animation to do that. Some of the animations when you're working with walking or moving around, you'll be working with kind of a stationary animation, and you will manage the translation of your character to fit that kind of gait. So for that, you can do that post-process. But this, you can at least get your animation running and driving using kind of the starter pack content that we downloaded. And then once you're done here, you can do the same thing with the face as well. So if you delete the face control board, you get rid of that. And then you press the plus button on this face, you can then choose that we did last month, and that would be here overlaid on top of kind of the audio as well as the animation. So then with all of these building blocks, you then can have a character talking using that sequence that we used from last month, combined with these animations. And now that we have one animation, we can always stack. You can do some merging. If you had 4 or 5, different movements. One was crouching and then he got back up, through a punch, whatever, what have you. You can then combine that and blend a lot of those in here, or you can do that in Motion Builder, whatever kind of platform you're more interested in. All right, so if you get to this point, you know, you're good to go. You've really started to bring your character out to life a little bit more. So I encourage you guys to really investigate some of this. There's quite a lot of animations out there, and definitely kind of, you know, dive in, explore, and try to break things. It's always a good learning curve to you know, explore on your own. So that's about it. I did just kind of want to refer to our next Immerse series, which is all going to be about haptics. So we'll be kind of talking about the haptic hands and some of the alternative haptic technologies out there. We'll include, you know, some of the previous ones that we've seen before, you know, electrical stimulation, you have kind of the full body suits, what have you. And then we can integrate, you know, some of the haptic hands technology, which we're thinking to incorporate into our next series, and how to integrate some of that development into Unity and Unreal Engine. So this should be a very exciting Immerse series as well. So hopefully you guys got a pretty good glimpse and understanding of what it takes to animate a character up until this point. And I know we kind of talked a lot, so I will kind of leave the remaining minutes for a discussion.
Talis, thank you. I send you the virtual and the physical applause here. So nicely done and good overview. I think everybody can hear me, but Praneeth is just checking here for a moment. Okay, I guess I'm not being seen, but that's okay. So Talis, thank you. Participants, please feel free to chat your questions. If I understand correctly, Talis, the sort of the big takeaway is it's easy now to capture our avatar or to sort of make a baseline animation. And it's relatively easy to capture with motion capture technology, sort of your skeleton. And really it's about sort of bringing those two together. So you can sort of meld these technologies and animate your creature or your body. Is this the only way to do that, or what are the other alternatives to what you sort of outlined today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, we did download kind of that animation pack from the marketplace, but there are a lot of other tools that can help you automate this process even more simply than what we did today. Some of you may have already heard of Adobe's Mixamo, which is very, very popular, which does auto rigging for you. So all you need to do is, if you have a character's mesh, you import the FBX file or the OBJ file into the platform, and then you just assign where the wrists are, where the knees are, where the groin is, and it will automatically stitch together a bone structure that would fit that mesh. And then after that, you're presented with a whole list of libraries of animations that are open source. And so truly, Brian, to that point, you know, there's not, you know, one way to do this. There's a lot of different applications that will help you automate and expedite this process. This is just one way to do it fully within Unreal. So yeah, good question.
Maybe picking up on that, and folks, please raise your hand or sort of send a chat if you have a question. Tell us, what do you see as for the advanced users on the call today? What are the research questions? You know, where are people pushing the boundaries on either automating this process, incorporating sort of that sort of streamlining, or is it, yeah, where is the innovations that are happening?
Yeah, that's a good question too. So I mean, previously, animating a character required, you know, simple geometry, if you will. So, you know, that's why a lot of old games, you know, had very blocky characters and they were moving around. Some of most of the games, the main character had no hair, because animating that hair and making it realistic was very, very difficult. Now we have all of these photorealistic scenes that we're working with, Unreal Engine's new Unreal Engine 5, the amount of realism that you can capture needs to kind of match the characters as well. And so a lot of the innovation is coming from, how do we animate hair on a very realistic kind of flow patterns, or, animating high geometry meshes. There are ways of kind of cheating that, or techniques like kind of the retopology. So you kind of simplify the mesh and overlay kind of your detailed maps on top of that, so that when you actually animate, you're only animating, a smaller number of vertices rather than a full detailed mesh. So that's one part. Another part is really animating, larger scale, characters and creatures, dragons, for example. A lot of these can be very complicated, and you can't just do that with motion tracking. But you did see in that example, they did stitch up the horse, for example, to animate that character. So there's definitely some cool innovative ways that you can animate a creature pretty well.
So there was a question that was just chatted here. So they have a skeleton that corresponds to an organ. I think it's the liver. So the vasculature of the liver is defining a skeleton, and they want to use it to animate how the liver moves around if they're able to track in some way the skeleton of the liver. Is that something that could be done here?
Yeah, I mean, for that, there's definitely a few techniques that you could do. You can deform the mesh too. So there are different ways of animating, let's say, a static image, like a balloon, for example. If it's blowing up or condensing, you can actually manipulate the vertices, and you might not need bones for that. So, for example, if a ball is falling and it bounces, sometimes it will compress and then it will expand and jump up. A lot of that is deforming the vertices and not necessarily adding bones to it. So you might want to kind of think about which strategy might fit for you. Bones are usually typically made for, opening doors or character, movements. But for one object to deform in kind of that vasculature and kind of that anatomy, that might be worth investigating as well.
Cool, thank you. There's a question, we'll take one more question here. So Royce chatted it in. With NVIDIA's Omniverse scaling, how are we to think about the ultimate workflow in the future? Will the immersive platform be more Omniverse focused, or will it be Unreal and in Unity? Now, my quick answer on that, Talis, I certainly want you to answer, is it's not going to be one, it's going to be multiple. But Talis, what's your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that was the premise of the Omniverse. They really are capitalizing on the USD format. So they want to make it so that your workflow fits the pipeline. If you are more into Unreal Engine and you've worked with Maya and that's kind of your go-to, they don't want to eliminate that. They want to make your final result compatible across different platforms. So if I'm working with Unity, I can share a project with you and you can open it on Unreal. So it's that interchangeability and that cross-platform that we kind of discussed a little bit more on the Immerse Series 1. But that's exactly it. I mean, it's being seamless with what you're comfortable with. And I think that's the whole idea of the Omniverse.
Very good. So Talis, thank you again. Participants, thank you. And next time, as Talis said, next month, well, in the third in the sequence, touching the metaverse, haptics. How do you physically interact? So we visually sense, we touch things. So that'll be next. Talis, again, thank you very much. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day. Stay safe, and goodbye from the Immersion Lab. Thank you.
Hey, everybody.